Welcome everyone to another episode of our Global Employability Expert Series. I am Mirta Aguirre, I'm the head of employability of Virtual Internships, and I'm very happy to be here with you today and with our great speaker. So before we go into our session, let's remember how our webinar works, okay? So we are recording this session in case you wanna rewatch it or share it with someone else later on, you are free to do it. We always record all our webinars. So if you want to explore our previous ones, you can go to our YouTube channel, you can subscribe and then be informed when a new webinar is available. And you can also watch our previous ones, okay? We're gonna have our speaker, he's going to share his presentation, and then we will have at the end a moment to ask some questions. You can ask all these questions throughout the presentation. Please use the Q&A box you have below, and through there you can ask all the questions for our speakers. If you want to comment on the chat, that's totally fine, but we will be taking questions from the Q&A. And if you have any questions related to your program, your experience, please remember to reach out to your IM, which is the person who has been contacting you. Okay? Great. So what is today's webinar? Today's webinar, its title is Unexplored Work Superpowers. Learn how empathy, compassion, and resilience can be great allies in the workplace. And for this, we have a great speaker, who I'm going to introduce, Rose Parsonage. So let's know who Rose is, okay? So Rose has spent the last 20 years living in Beijing, China, working in the legal professional services industry. After a tumultuous 2020 and 21, and after conducting a review of his priorities and life's purpose, Rose has changed career focus and is now delivering workplace wellness and resilience training and courses to law firms and organizations. Working closely with his wife, Teresa, the owner of a thriving yoga studio in Beijing, Rose is striving to help organizations create empathetic, fear-free environments where inspired and healthy people can bring their whole selves to work every day. And what are we going to explore in particular today in our webinar? Well, so during this presentation, Rose will discuss the increasing importance of resilience and well-being in the workplace, especially after COVID-19 and all the pandemic we've been experiencing, how a positive and mindful approach to work and life can help you endure, recover, and thrive from life's challenges, and why empathy and compassion are the new career superpowers. So thank you, Rose, for being here today. I'm very excited with this topic. I believe I cannot see you, Rose. You went black.
Am I black? Let's see.
Black.
The video should be on. Is that on?
Yes, it's on.
You can see me?
I cannot see you. Can the audience see Rose? Maybe try, if you turn your camera off and then on.
Yep. It says it's on. What is everybody saying? Anything?
No, it's off. But you can see me, the audience can see me, right? And can see my screen.
I can see your screen. Well, we'll continue to play with that. I mean, it's just one of those spanners that life throws at you. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the introduction. Actually kind of overwhelmed. I definitely don't feel an expert in the expert kind of sense of the word, but I definitely have a lot of experience that I would love to share this evening. As you've already mentioned in the introduction, I've been based in Beijing for over 20 years now, and I spent the last 15 of those working in the legal industry. I'm married with 3 kids, and I'm going through an interesting period in my life. I'm going through a transition, a career transition. I think it's taken me this long 20 odd years of working to find out what I'm truly passionate about, what it is that I really like to do, and the kind of work that I want to be doing. I feel I found my purpose, which doesn't mean that the first 20 years of my career have been a waste. They've been learnings. And I think if I look at the audience today, I imagine most of you are in your late teens, early 20s, currently studying, just finished, wondering where your career is going to go and what your life journey is going to be. Now, it's easier for me at this stage because I can look back and I can reflect. I can reflect on things that went well, things that didn't go well. And, it's in hindsight that I can see how it all worked out. Now, I don't know if you can see the screen here, but there's an old Chinese parable. In Chinese, it's called Sai Wang Shima, and it means the old man who lost his horse. And it's a great story because I think it frames our discussion this evening. So a long time ago, there was a poor Chinese farmer. He lost his only horse. And all the neighbors came around and said, well, that's too bad. And the farmer said, maybe. And shortly after, that horse returned, bringing another horse with him. And all the neighbors came around and said, wow, well, that's good fortune. To which the farmer replied, maybe. And the next day, the farmer's son was trying to tame the new horse, and he fell from the horse and broke his leg. And all the neighbors came around and said, well, that's too bad. And the farmer replied, maybe. And shortly after, the emperor declared war on a neighboring nation and ordered all of the able-bodied men to come and fight. And many died or were badly maimed. But the farmer's son was unable to fight because of his broken leg, and so was spared. And all of the neighbors came around and said, well, that's good fortune. To which the farmer replied, maybe. And obviously, the story goes on. We have lots of ups and downs in our life. And so what is the lesson there? And it's a lesson that I've learned and can reflect back on, is we shouldn't get too attached to what happened to us, whether we think it's good or bad at the time, because life has a funny way of working out. And I think it's only with a positive attitude and not being bogged down in the what ifs that we can actually make something of our lives. And so actually, if we go on to that next slide, a lot of us think that life is, and our careers are just a simple, life is not just a,
Exactly.
one-way journey. So, okay, it's ups and downs. Okay, and so
like just
to help.
That was a real example of like ups and downs, right? You had
Absolutely,
everything prepared, and then it didn't go as expected. But that's a really good example. We planned.
And this is the same as last time.
Exactly.
So the last time we hosted this call, I was calling in from home. I'm not at home tonight. I'm actually in a WeWork type environment, and I could hear everybody. Nobody could see or hear me. And I was like, okay, it's a talk on resilience. All right, there's nothing I can do about it. And Myrta, you were so good about that. So thank you for that.
This is being resilient. We're going to explore now, but yeah, good example.
Exactly. All right. So today I was going to kind of talk through my life's journey. I personally find it quite rewarding to talk to others about their stories, and you can learn from other people's experiences. And I kind of want to share. It's a combination, because we're talking about global employability. We're talking about career. I know that a number of you are probably late teens, early 20s, graduates, just starting out a new job, trying to figure out what it is you want to do. Have you chosen the right career? And believe me, very soon you'll realize that whatever you thought you were going to do, you probably won't end up doing. And if I look back and reflect, I think you got to find something that you're passionate about and that you really enjoy. And I think at the very beginning, and hopefully you heard, I've kind of given up on a 15-year career in the legal profession. I hope to come back in a different way, but working for a law firm, I realize now, was not for me. And I think in part it's because I wasn't a very good lawyer, to be honest. But I just wasn't passionate about the law. And I think what I want to get across is I'm passionate about the people who work in the industry, but not so much about the day-to-day legal law stuff. And so I'll kind of tell you my journey, how I got into that. I mean, in short, I graduated from university. I studied law. I was all set to go to law school to follow that track with no real ambition, no real thought going into that. It's like, sounds, I could do that. And a good friend of mine had decided to buy a round the world ticket. And after studying for 4 years, I was like, that sounds good. And so I bought a round the world ticket. And great parents, looking back, my parents said, yeah, go for it, do it. So I deferred entry to law school and I set off my travels and ended up working in Japan for 6 months. So what we bought a round the world ticket going to a number of different countries, and each country we stayed much longer than the original tickets we'd intended. Ended up in Japan with no money, with intention of then going to Australia. Managed to get a job in a bar in Tokyo, and prolonging that trip. And then I saw cheap flights to China. I'd never even thought about China, never really had any interest in going to China, but I had a couple of weeks to kill. And I went to China in the middle of July. And a couple of things happened. One is, at that time, China was so much cheaper than Japan. So the cost of living was much cheaper. It was the middle of the summer and I was staying at a backpacker hotel with a swimming pool. I made lots of friends. And to be honest, China was very different to what I'd read about up until that point. I think up until that point, I'd read more of this very dystopian Maoist kind of environment. It just wasn't that. And I met a girl. I met an American girl who had just moved to Beijing, and she was looking for a roommate, and I liked her, and I thought, okay, I'm in. And so actually I sold the rest of my round the world ticket. I was intending to go to Australia and New Zealand and the US, and I had work visas, and I gave it up because I liked Beijing, I liked being in Asia, and I liked this girl. So coming to China wasn't because of any deep-seated passion for China, but here I am 20 years later. It's amazing how it's kind of grown on me. And so when I first arrived in Beijing back in late 90s, I ended up teaching English, as actually I found a lot of foreigners who work here do. It's the easiest way to get a work visa, a great way to get to know the people. And it gave me that opportunity, that time to kind of start learning the language. And I think if there's one lesson, from a language point of view, is it's like the story is, when's the best time to plant a tree? 10 years ago. When's the second best time? Right now. And the thing with languages, I didn't know that I was going to be in China for 20 years, but I knew that I wanted to try the language. And I'm so glad that I made that effort, because that opened up so many new doors for me later down the line. And how I ended up working in the legal industry was, living in Beijing, I taught English for a couple of years. I then ended up working for a British marketing research company. They had operations in China, working with a Chinese American partner, and I kind of sat within that dynamic, helping to kind of run that. And I had a number of recruiter friends, friends in the recruitment industry. And I'd get a call from them once every couple of months saying, hey, do you know somebody in engineering? Do you know somebody in finance? And on this occasion, I said, do you know anybody who's a lawyer or who has studied law? And you've got to remember, this is beginning of the early 2000s. Not very many foreigners were in Beijing, not very many lawyers. And I said, well, I studied law. And I was lucky enough that the firm that I joined, they wanted somebody to play more of a client-facing role. The head of the Beijing office where I joined had just taken on the China management role. And so to free him up, he needed somebody to come in to play more of a client-facing role, but also to help manage the local Chinese team. And that was the perfect fit for me. I enjoy working with people. I enjoy engaging with clients. And so if I look back, I spent that first 10 years working in a law firm, really just enjoying the leadership side. I ended up managing the Beijing office, managing different teams, managing different clients, and not really investing heavily in the study of the law. I knew enough. I think, and I reflect back, I know a little about a lot of things. Whereas now I realize if I wanted to excel within the IP industry, the intellectual property industry, I probably needed to study very deeply in one specific area. So very good at engaging clients, talking on a number of different issues, bringing things together, getting the right team members in place. And as I mentioned, my interest really, if I look at the things that I read and things that I studied, really was around leadership, as around people management, about how to get the most out of myself as an individual, but also how to get the most out of my team. And I don't know if you can see the screen here, but these are 4 of my favorite books. And I can clearly remember when I first read them, it's like, oh, wow, the 1 Minute Manager, you can read it in 20 minutes, 30 minutes. It's 3 basic points, which are, help people understand what's expected of them, give them feedback when they do something positive, and give them feedback when they do something, that's not so good. That was it. But I remember reading that book going, of course, I respond much better to praise and encouragement than I do from criticism. It's just natural human psychology. So that was like, a big light bulb for me. The next one was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's a bestseller, and it has been for the last 30 years for a good reason. It's one of the best books. If I could recommend any book today, it's that one, because it helps you to find your purpose. Now, it's a book that I keep coming back to at different stages of my life and my career, and it talks to me differently each time. But it's just such a great foundational book to help you understand who you are. I think where I want to get to is it's only now in my mid-40s that I've really figured out who I am, what it is that I can do better than anybody else, and what gives me purpose and passion. The sooner you can find that, the better, if you can. And there's a few tips that we'll go through. Also, and again, I've been reflecting a lot back, Crucial Conversations. I read that at a time that I was fortunate enough to be sent to the UK to study on a mediation course. I did a week's mediation training. So mediation is where you have an impartial third party will bring together 2 parties in conflict and help them to navigate those discussions. And what I realized through that was you will never, ever fully understand another person's perspective or challenges or needs. So you may be in conflict with somebody, but you'll never fully understand what's motivating them, where their fears are coming from, what challenges they're facing. And so that was a great learning, because now whenever I talk to somebody, I'm always trying to play that devil's advocate, trying to understand and put myself in those shoes, to the frustration of my wife. I'm quite quick to take somebody else's side in maybe a conflict she's in, just to give her a different perspective. Or I want to think the best of people. In Crucial Conversations, they talk a lot about why would a normal, intelligent, rational person do what they're doing. So for me, that's a key thing. And, obviously through my learning, through that leading teams, I made many mistakes. And I think one of the key things about resilience, which you get onto, is this need to bounce back, to learn from the things that you've done wrong. And I remember a number of my team members were based in Shanghai and in Guangzhou, and we'd have regular weekly calls. And I remember one particular call, I wasn't being particularly mindful of how I was expressing my needs or my concerns. And one of my team members started to cry. And she felt that I was being unnecessarily critical, and she was right. I wasn't being mindful aware. And that was a great learning. I literally went home, got my passport, went to the airport, flew to Shanghai, had dinner with her, and just talked it through. And, it was all about me. It's nothing to do with her. And so you need those F-ups, to be honest, in life, to be able to bounce back and realize. The 4th book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. This was recommended to me by a good friend when I was up for partnership. So I was with this particular law firm for 10 years, and the opportunity, the China business was growing, the clients were growing, the team was doing well. I still didn't know a huge amount about IP, but I was doing well. I was being able to generate these conversations and do really interesting things. And what got you here won't get you there is talking about those who are at mid-management who just won't get to that senior leadership because they have their own baggage. They have things that they do that upset others. And I won't go into too much detail. Again, it's a very good, simple book of things that you should not do if you want to, because charisma and attitude and arrogance will get you so far, but it won't get to the top because people just will not accept that from a true leader. Anyway, 2010-11 were probably two of the biggest years in my life in terms of career or taking a break. So I was lucky that after studying at university for 4 years, took a break, took a year out. And then here I am, another 10 years later, taking a year out. So a number of things happened in 2010. The first one, as I mentioned, I was up for partnership. And as part of that partnership interview process, they conducted a survey through the leadership circle where I was asked to complete answers to a series of about 200 questions about how strongly I agreed or disagreed with certain kind of leadership statements. And then all of my peers, people who reported to me, who I reported to, clients, also gave their feedback. And at the end of this, what you get is you get to compare how you see yourself compared to how other people see you. And believe me, it's incredibly sobering. It wasn't an enjoyable experience. And I think if I look back on the feedback that I got, and I've kept all that info, if I look at that feedback, it was right. So they have on the top, you have creative tendencies, the things that you want to help you be more creative and spontaneous and integrity and authenticity. And on the bottom things, you had things that maybe are reactive and things that might hold you back. Like I was quite high on arrogance, which, my early 30s, I was doing well, I was single, I was earning good money, probably was quite arrogant. But interestingly, one of the quadrants that I was highest on was something called pleasing. And the way that the coach that kind of talked me through the results was saying was, pleasing is great if you want to give good client service. You want to give the best, you want to give them a good experience. But it's not a good thing to have if you are lacking in integrity. I think what I was finding is I would be saying different things to different people to please them, and not necessarily because of that's how I felt. And yet, if I looked around at the people I was most inspired by, it was those that were courageous, that were authentic, who would speak out, who were not scared of getting into trouble for speaking up. And that's one thing that I've kind of trying to taken on board and trying to find my voice and not be scared about offending people. Now, I don't want to offend people, of course, but not being scared to voice my opinion. So I don't want to please people anymore at the sake of losing my integrity, if you know what I mean. So it's finding now ways of maybe disagreeing with people, but doing it in a way that is respectful and kind and professional. So the leadership circle was a very sobering exercise. I learned a lot about myself. I did a lot of coaching after that, trying to find out what my true values were. At the same time, I met my future wife. So we have some pictures here. I just came out of a 4-year relationship, and I promised myself that I would never settle. I'm not going to settle again. I was fortunate that the girl that I was with, she broke up the relationship. And I'm glad that she did that she had the courage to do that, because I just kind of settled. It's like, okay, it's kind of comfortable. Wasn't great, wasn't terrible, but it settled. And she had the courage to break it up. And after that point, I'm never going to settle. And then I met my wife, and she was the one. It was just great. And we were on holiday over Chinese New Year in Bali. Actually, it was the first time I'd ever done yoga, and yoga is a big theme in the rest of my life. And at the end of the holiday, I had to go back to work, but she stayed on for an extra week because she was teaching at a school. And at the airport, I picked up a book called The 4-Hour Work Week by Timothy Ferriss. And on the flight from Bali to Singapore, I read the book, and it kind of changed everything. And now, I don't know if you are aware of the book. The book talks to two things. One is the first part, which is the most relevant at the time, was why do we work the way that we do? Why do we feel the need to work, 8 hours a day for 40 hours a week for 40 years and then retire? Why can't we take mini retirements? Why can't we work from home? Why can't we work flexibly? What's the worst that can happen if you can arrange your life in a different way? And then the second part of the book is, how can you finance a different type of lifestyle? But for me, the big takeaway was, what am I doing? And I remember getting off the plane in Singapore and calling my parents, calling my best friend, saying, that's it, I'm done. I've met this beautiful girl. And at that point, I'd been 12 years in China, questioning why I was still there. I still enjoyed it. It was very comfortable. Again, very easy. I kind of just settled. And I was starting to think about, how would I leave China? Would it be through work, study? In the end, it was I met a girl who, she'd been there for 5-6 years and was also looking to leave China to go and study. So we agreed to leave together, and we traveled. We traveled for 2 years. It was only meant to be one, but we had such a good time. We traveled for 2, and we got married at the end of it in Mexico. And for my wife, that trip was the beginnings for her of her finding her true purpose. So this is kind of good for me, in my reflection, watching her just go through this process of finding out that she always loved yoga, and she taught a bit of yoga in Beijing. But then we traveled and we spent 3 months in India, and we studied yoga together. For her, it was building on her passion and what she'd already learned. For me, it was just completely new and a new experience. But at the end of it, she's like, this is what I want to do for a living. And so after our wedding, we're living in her parents' basement in the US. What are we going to do now? And as we looked around, China, again, just so many opportunities for both of us. We very well connected. We both have a history there. And so actually it was an easy decision to go back to China. So that was good. It was a conscious decision to come back to China, to maybe have young kids, to raise them. And I went straight back into IP. I went straight back into a different law firm. And again, a very different experience. And I'll be honest, I didn't probably think that process through. And I think already today, just in the presentation, we've got ladders, at the beginning, and it's important. Stephen Covey talks about, there's no point climbing the ladder if the ladder is, set up against the wrong wall. And after coming back to China in 2014 and re-entering the IP industry, I didn't enjoy it at all. It was a very different, again, moving to a different firm, different environment, more challenging time, new work experiences that I'd never encountered before. So my previous firm, great firm, good people, working with them through the boom times when we were just growing and everything was just amazing. And then I came back to China working for a smaller firm with just a whole host of different challenges, different personalities, different management that I, to be honest, struggled with. My values as an individual, how I feel clients should be treated, how individuals in the office should be treated, just weren't the same values of other people within the business. So I very shortly left that firm and I joined a big American multinational. And again, very different experience, being a very small fish in a very big pond. Again, just a very challenging time. Again, so I've had these difficult work experiences where I think in part it's just because I hadn't really thought through what it is that I wanted to do. And where my strengths really lied. And so, I rejoined my earlier firm, and that was all great. Came back to a firm with people that I knew, that I loved, in a very different role, which is challenging. But then COVID happened, and everybody has a COVID story, and this is really the wake up moment for me. My wife and I were in Mexico when COVID first broke out in China. Our flights back to Beijing were cancelled. We waited a while. We then booked flights, they were cancelled. We booked more flights, they were cancelled. And eventually China closed its border. So for the next 8 months, my wife and I and our family, we bounced between Mexico and the US. I was very lucky that I was able to work remotely, that my company had work that I could do remotely, but it was challenging for a number of reasons. One is just that uncertainty, the uncertainty of when could we go back to China? Our life was there, our house was there. Would we ever go back? At what point do we just cut our losses and try something new? But also gratitude. We got to spend a lot of time with Teresa's family and my family that we never would have had a chance to do. And it's only once we eventually got back to China 8 months later, and I started to talk to colleagues and friends. And so I sit on the board of the British Chamber of Commerce here in China, and talking to their members and the people who work for those companies, I've really realized that everybody have their own COVID story, and everybody is going through their own personal and professional challenges. So it doesn't matter who you are within an organization, whether you're entry level, a junior professional, through to the CEO, everybody's going through something. And I don't know if there's that old adage, if you're an actor on stage, or if you're about to give a speech, and say, if you imagine everybody naked, and it helps to calm you down and relax you. Well, I find out when I meet with people, I'm just thinking to myself, you've got something going on in your life that is causing you stress and anxiety, which makes you real, makes you human. So for me, I'm not scared of meeting people anymore, because once you can get to that part of the conversation, once you can get underneath and figure out who they are as a person, we're all the same. We're all vulnerable, we're all scared, we're all challenged. It's just trying to help people open up. And so coming back to China after 8 months away, and seeing actually another way of life in the suburbs in the US, again, gave me more perspective. And at the beginning of 2020, I took an online test, and I would recommend this to all of you. It's maybe $40, $50 wherever you are. It's from Gallup, which is the big international management consultancy research firm. They have something called the Strength Finder. And again, it's one of these self-assessment tests where you rank how strongly you agree or disagree about your skills and talents. And at the end of it, you'll be given a ranking of where your skills lie. And the objective is not to focus on the things that you're weak at. And lots of companies do that. They make you focus on areas where they think you need to improve, instead of taking what are your strengths and really helping you to just dive in and make the most of that. And what came out of this for me was the top 10 of the 30 odd strengths was harmony, empathy, individualization, input, response. And that resonated so much with me. A, this is what I love to do. And B, why I was so unhappy. I was writing reports. I was doing lots of research. I wasn't interacting day to day with clients anymore. And that's what I love to do. I love to get in there. I love to speak. I love to get to understand people's true talents. And looking around our business, I just realized that everybody was stressed or burnt out or anxious or challenged. And as an organization, we weren't really doing enough to manage that, to understand that, to support that. And so after talking to my firm and realizing where my interest lay, which is around working with people and helping, and that the business they understood that and they respected those skills, but they weren't ready for that. I left them to kind of set up a new business with my wife. Now, my wife in the meantime has been doing an amazing job with her yoga studio. So we came back to Beijing, and she set up a yoga studio in Beijing, which is one of the leading studios here. She does teacher trainings, and she's thriving. And over the course of the last 4 years, she's probably graduated over 200 people who've done her 200-hour teacher training course. They're all business professionals. They all have day jobs and careers, and all of them have said, why can't we take some of these learnings about how to look after ourselves and take them into a corporate setting? So that's what I'm hoping to do, is to start to raise awareness about the need for well-being and resilience, to help people look after themselves better, and then to help businesses to start caring more about their staff and getting involved. And through the British Chamber of Commerce, we've just launched a new well-being hub. We had a launch of a survey report we did a few months ago. So conscious of time, what I've realized, I guess, is, and this is from the aeroplanes, if you want to be able to help others, if you want to be your best in a work environment, if you want to be able to support friends, family, colleagues, you need to look after yourself first. You need to take care of yourself, your physical, your mental, your emotional health. Find purpose in what it is that you're doing, find passion, and to find a community of like-minded people, whether it's in your work or outside your work, that can actually help you with that. I'm going to leave it there because I see there's a number of people in the chat. I'm conscious of time, but I'm willing, hopefully, to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah,
I
Ross,
feel like
thank you for everything you've shared. And one key thing I wanted to explore is, like you mentioned, so resilience has to do with learning, right, from our mistakes and really getting over hard situations. What do you think, like when we start in, our first professional steps, how can we have this mindset to really be okay with the fact that we are going to make mistakes, we are going to learn from that? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think we're all very lucky. We're early on in our careers, we're still in that kind of study student mindset. We know that there's still a lot that we have to learn. And I think it's going in with that learning mindset, being curious and being open to feedback, to being open to new experiences. I know some of us get challenged by negative feedback or feedback that is seen to be critical. And that's just human nature. It's that kind of fight or flight response that we have. But I think if we can look at all feedback as just being another perspective, it's something that we didn't know and that we can take it or leave it depending on what we do, that's fine. I think being open to new experience, open to feedback, not taking things too personally, and will go a long way. I appreciate it's challenging when you're first starting out, but realize, and again, it's one of my realizations, everybody's going through something, everybody's feeling, even the most confident person in the room has their own Achilles heel, their own thing that they are vulnerable with. We're all human.
Yeah. And that's part of what you have shared, right? Like we all have our struggles and we all go through different journeys. And I think you one thing I'm keeping a very key message for me is, like, be patient, right? Like sometimes we want everything happening at the same time, but we may understand that things can happen a little bit later and differently from what we had thought, and that's still okay. I have a really nice question from the audience that says, what thing would you tell yourself to your younger self in terms of career-wise, right? You go back into the past 15, 25 years ago and you find yourself younger. What could be your piece of advice for your younger self in terms of career advice?
I mean, the old cliche is do what you're passionate about. So I think that's what most people tell you from a career point of view. And I think there's a huge amount of truth in that. I think for many of you now, you've already chosen what you're going to study. And I think if I look back, first of all, what I studied was probably the wrong thing. If I look back, And I think I have 3 young children now, so I think about this quite a bit. I just want them to be happy, and I want them to excel in whatever it is that they want to excel in. So I think the advice that I'd be giving to them, and I'd give to you if you could study again, is choose something that you are passionate about, that you want to spend 24 hours a day just reading and consuming and understanding. It doesn't matter what that is, whether it's art or history or whatever it is, just throw yourself into that. Because ultimately, 20 years down the line, nobody cares, to be honest, what degree you've done. It's about how you apply yourself and who you are as a person.
And how can you think that we can explore our passions? Because sometimes, yeah, we say we hear follow our passion, but what if I don't have any passion? What if I don't know what I like? How can I do?
That is a good question. I mean, it's about opening yourself up to new experiences, kind of putting yourself out there into different, finding out what you don't like is one way of helping you to find out what you do like. But we in yoga, we talk about your flow. What's the things that you do where time just disappears? Being more aware of that and then doing more of that, I think is key. Anything that gives you pain or too much anxiety are probably things that, you shouldn't be doing. And look, there are lots of kind of online self-examinations, assessment that you can do that can help point you in a direction. But finding your passion takes a little bit of time, but it's whatever brings you joy. And it's all about happiness in the individual moments. It's joy over a concerted period of time.
Yeah, and I like what you said about exploring, right? Because many things we won't know we like doing them until we're doing them, right? And I really relate to your story because I studied international relations, and then I said, okay, I love traveling, I love reflecting about the world, but I'm not really into world politics. That's not my passion. I didn't know what my passion was. And then I started volunteering, traveling, and then I discovered I loved education, and it was by actually starting teaching. I hadn't had any formal training, so I started doing it, and I said, wow, I really like this, right? And then I started taking many more opportunities, but I didn't discover what I liked after I really started doing different things. So I think that's a really key idea, right? How can we start? How can we put ourselves in this exploration mode, taking new things, new activities, and also something you said about discovering what we don't like is also important. And perhaps for our participants as well here, they're having an internship experience and they say like, I'm not really liking this. I'm not sure this is going to be a field I want to deepen later on. But that's good too, because now we know, okay, this is for me, this is not for me, right? And you also mentioned
Absolutely.
something about flow. When we start doing some activities we really like and they absorb all our time, that's what we call the flow state, right? Like being really concentrated and nobody around, nothing disturbs me. That's a good indication that there's something there that really drives us, right?
Absolutely. And I think we're lucky that everybody who's on this call is doing an internship or has just finished one. They're already demonstrating that they're curious, that they want to learn new things, try new experiences. So that's great. In terms of how to maximize that internship, and after you're all having different experiences, is trying to understand the why to what you're being asked to do. I think is going to be key, and being willing to ask, I think, is good. And then trying to get, I know it's very, very difficult online, having these kind of virtual internships, but really trying to get to know the people that you are working with and what's motivating them. That's what drives me now, is getting curious about the people.
Yeah, and well, talking about people, right? There are basic skills that we all should develop, like you mentioned, right? Being good with people entails communicating with people, right? Asking questions, like being empathetic, being able to ourselves think from their perspective and at least trying, right? And I think that's also really key. And I'm really thankful about all the books you shared, because these are great books. So for everyone in this call, I really recommend that you take a look at these books. I know some of them, but not all of them. And the one about the seven, what's the name? The
Seven
seven
habits of
habits.
highly effective people. Yeah.
That's a great book. I read it when I was younger. I should read it again, because you mentioned, yeah, the fact that we all discover new things when reading. But that book, I think it really talked about our passions and our principles, and how that can be good guidance for our future, right?
Absolutely.
I have another question. What if you had in your early 20s responsibilities that limit your freedom to find your passion? Is it late to find your passion in late 20s? I know the answer to that. What do you think?
Is it too late to find your passion in your 20s?
Yes.
No. You can I mean, I'm just finding, not that I'm just finding it now, but I'm embracing it now. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go with it instead of bottling it up. No, we're always learning. We're always finding new opportunities, experiences, passions. Keep looking for them. Keep finding them. Because as well as your life changes, your career changes, as you get older, you also have things that are different priorities in your life. So that will again just shape. So it's a constant renewal. All of your relationships will change, with your family, with your parents, with your loved ones, because you're changing and they're changing. So no, it's never too late.
Yeah, and I like to add that we as human beings, we have so much potential, so many things to do, so many things we could discover, right? Like I don't know if I love singing because I've never taken singing lessons. Perhaps I start singing and like, okay, I'm not gonna be a professional singer, but I can do something I really like with that, and that we can do with so many different things. So I believe that to think that we are already finished, like this is who I am and I will always be like this, it's very limiting, right? We have so many things to discover, and we may discover new passions later on, and that's totally fine. I think that's a really good idea to wrap up our webinar. The fact that we can have this exploring mindset, right? Say, I'm all the time learning, discovering new things, finding more about who I am, what I like to do. And it's okay to be sometimes a little bit lost. That we should embrace this uncertainty, because we're all the time discovering. So I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
That's a great way to sum it up. I mean, even for me now, 46, I'm still trying new things and learning new things, and that's great. So be curious and find what it is that makes you sing.
Exactly. So I really invite you to be open, ask questions, be curious, and really start thinking that, well, we are in a discovering path, right? So we are always learning new things. And talking about discovering, remember that during our program, you have 2 coaching calls. These are 2 conversations you will have with someone who is trained to have a proper conversation, and you can ask and you can share your reflections, your doubts, your thinkings about career development. So take advantage of that, because that's really useful for yourself, for you. So Rose, I'm really thank you about you being here today. I think this was a really interesting and inspiring talk. We're never too late to keep on learning, to discover our passions. Plus, if you discover that in your 20s, like, that's so great.
Good luck to you. Absolutely.
That's so great. That's so great. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the rest of your internship, or if you have already finished, I hope you have enjoyed it. And remember, we're always here if you want to talk about career development. Thank you very much, Rose. It was
Thank you
a
very much.
pleasure.
Appreciate it, Meta.
And remember, you can stay in touch with Ross. You can add him on LinkedIn if you want to stay in touch. So
Please do.
thank you and have an awesome day.
Cheers, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.